So we're continuing our investigation of multiplying integers, and we're going to attach that to like a word problem situation now and do a few examples. So here's the word problem. The number of students who bring their lunch to Phoenix Middle School had been decreasing at a rate of 4 students each month. What integer represents the total change in the number of students bringing their lunch after 3 months? So what we know is that decreasing, so that means that there are less kids bringing their lunch and that it's 4 students less each month, and we want to know what that would be in 3 months. Okay, so we know the decreasing 4 students a month, and we want to know 3 months. Okay, so now we're going to move this down to the hands-on activity. All right, so we have, okay, so the first question we have to do is we have to actually write the correct integer. So if the amount is decreasing by 4 students, I want you to tell me right now, what would that integer be? So you should have answered -4. So if there are 4 decreasing students, that's -4 students. So, and it shows this in the picture. 3 groups, so 3 months of -4 students. So we have to draw the picture or make the model of 3 groups of -4. So if you come down here, we're going to see 3 groups of 4 negative counters each. So if we add 3 sets of 4 negative counters to the mat, we're going to count the total number of negative counters. 4 plus 4 is 8 plus 4 is what? So go ahead and answer that question. How many negative counters are there? That's correct. There are -12 counters. So positive 3 groups of a -4 counters each is going to be -12 counters. So after 3 months, the total change in the number of students bringing their lunch will be -12. That will be the change. So in the previous activity, we noticed that a positive 3 times a -4 had a negative product of -12. So let's look at this next example. If we have -2 groups of 3, so that -2 means we were removing 2 sets of 3, what is our product going to be? So there are no counters on the mat, so we're going to add 2 sets of 3 0 pairs. All right, so we modeled this in the previous video. So it says to remove the 3 positive counters, 2 groups of 3 positive counters, you can see they've crossed that out. So what's the product going to be? Go ahead and answer that question. So it shows that there are 6 negative counters left. So if there are 6 negative counters left, the product is going to be negative. So a negative times a positive, once again, is equaling a negative. A positive times a negative equals a negative times a positive equals a negative. We need to notice these patterns. So in this last example, we're going to model if we have -2 groups. So if we take away 2 groups of -4, what that would look like. So both factors are negative. We're going to remove how many sets? Please answer that question. Okay, we are going to remove 2 sets. And how many negatives are we going to remove? Answer that question, please. We're going to remove 4 negatives. So there are no counters on the mat, so the first thing we're going to do is draw 2 sets of 4 negative counters as 0 pairs. Okay, so I'm going to pause and do that. Okay, so positive, negative, 0 pair, positive, negative, so I've drawn 4 of those, and I've drawn a second group of 4 negative pairs, 4 0 pairs. All right, so now we're going to remove the negatives. So I'm going to circle the negatives, remove them, circle the second group of negatives, remove that. And so how many positive counters are remaining? Please answer that question. There are 8 remaining. And so if you have -2 groups of -4, what is the product going to be? That's correct. It's going to be positive 8. So a negative times a negative equals a positive. A positive times a positive equals a positive. And as we've just noticed in the previous example, if you have different signs, a negative times a positive will equal a negative. A positive times a negative equals a negative. So when there are different signs, the product is going to be negative. When there are the same type of signs, the answer will be positive. So what's the most important concept that we learned in the 2 videos that you've just watched?